Welcome to Lockdown Diaries. A couple of days back, almost a week into the lockdown, I saw an ambulance and a police vehicle waiting outside one of the towers in our community. My first concern was whether one of our neighbors had tested positive for COVID 19. A little while later, we heard that it was a case of suicide. A young lady in her mid 30s had taken her life. I felt anxious and helpless, but a part of me also felt that her struggle was finally over. Have any of you ever felt the need to hit the pause button? I'm sure a lot of us have. It's a dark place to be in, but it also feels like an easy escape at times. On today's episode, we will discuss suicide and what we can do to prevent it with Nelson, founder of Suicide Prevention India Foundation. It's a difficult time, like we were talking about earlier. And how do over anxious people like me deal with suicide ideation during a lockdown when we have limited access to our therapist?
Let's take this one by one. Now, let's talk about suicide ideation. Suicide ideation is thoughts entering into your head. Either very direct thoughts which says I'm better off dead, or I wish that this whole thing would end, or I wish I can sleep and not wake up anymore, or is there a switch that I can switch off that will completely erase me, and so on and so forth. So it's this thing about wanting to die and not to live. And suicide ideation, it's okay to have it. It's not necessarily normal, but a lot of people, in the course of their lives, will undergo suicide ideation for various reasons, and it's okay to have those thoughts. I think it's of concern when you start to move from thinking about it to maybe start to making a plan about how you want to die. And then, the suicide ideation would reach a state where, you if you have a plan where you've thought about the time, you've thought about the date, you've thought about where, and you've thought about the method, then, these are very detailed planning. So that's a cause for concern, as well as if there is going to be the stress is going to be to such an extent where you've reached a state where you're unable to think that going on with life is going to be more difficult than to end it. And you have this situation of where you're feeling hopeless, that you've lost all hope.
Sometimes, it's like also a feeling of being overwhelmed. What happens with me sometimes, I feel like I'm on this merry-go-round, and I just want to get down. It's just too much is happening around me, and most of it I just can't help, and there's nothing much I can do. And it's just if I could just hit the pause button and just get off, I just don't want to be a part of the circus anymore.
Right. Okay. So merry-go-round, want to hit pause, don't want to be part of the circus anymore, you want to take a break. So what I want to say is that, especially during what is going on right now, which is to say the COVID crisis and the lockdown that's happened, it's a time which is unprecedented. I'm not sure anybody has gone through this before, where all of us are feeling this at the same time. And I'm not sure whether we'll see something like this again in the future. So what I want to say is this feeling of being overwhelmed, I'm hearing this from a lot of people, and especially if you're juggling many roles. You have to continue to work. In fact, maybe work is increased. You have to clean up at home, or you have to cook, and so on, or you're juggling many roles. So there is a sense of being overwhelmed. And also, this is a period when there is a lot of stress. There's a stress of maybe financial insecurity, or job loss, or about what the future looks like, or about whether whether you can step out and have a normal life. There's a sense of loss about the fact that what you had as your routine is completely destroyed.
Also the uncertainty, like when will things actually become normal? Will it ever become normal?
Absolutely. So there is a huge uncertainty, and the point being that nobody really knows about when things will return back to normal, whether things will return back to normal at all. And the most important thing is acceptance. The acceptance that it's okay to be overwhelmed, it's okay to be on this merry-go-round, it's okay to be in this circus where you feel like what is happening, and it's okay to be screaming to say I want to hit the pause button. Now what is important is to understand that this uncertainty that is you're feeling, this doubt, this stress and everything else, and definitely for a lot of people feeling depressed, and fearful of the future. So this anxiety is something that I feel myself, and what I do is I process it by saying this is normal considering the circumstances that we are in right now. So okay, so what do you do next? The most important thing is to understand that there are some things that which are beyond our control, which is to say we really don't know when things will go back to normal. But there are some things which are within our control, which is to say keep our routine going, make sure that we are eating on time, counting our blessings in terms of saying, hey, whether you have food on the table, a roof over your head, or people that will love you, and the fact that perhaps you still have your job, or the fact that if you've lost your job, that India is a country which among all the major countries, it's among the two biggest economies which will continue to grow. So our chances of getting a job or reskilled to find a new job is still very high. So one, accepting the uncertainty and saying, yes, this is going to happen. Number two, to talk about this to someone else, maybe to your near and dear ones, or to your friends, because everyone is going through the same thing. And thirdly, to perhaps seek help in case you are unable to deal with it yourself, or if you are unable to talk about it with your near and dear ones, and you still feel that you're unable to function normally. It's okay to seek help. And right now there are thousands of mental health professionals offering therapy at no cost, and these are psychiatrists, these are clinical psychologists, the psychiatric social workers, highly trained, and they're available in different languages. And you should make use of a trained professional to be able to talk about something like this. So it's important to know that there is help available. Also, like you said, you want to hit pause. It is perfectly okay to hit pause. Maybe you let the house not be cleaned for a few days. Maybe you can order takeout, or you're just eating food that you've cooked yesterday or the day before, or you just decide that you want to take the day off work, that you want to inform your manager, or if you have to work, finish your shift, but don't do the other things that you're supposed to do. Do things that you like doing. Perhaps watch something on television, or move your body with regard to whatever the way you want to move your body, to dance, to yoga, to just putting something on YouTube.
Yeah, that has really helped. Like I try to stick to this exercise routine every evening. Our studio is doing an online FB live every evening, and that has really helped. To look forward to that routine of having 1 hour of physical activity, whether it's Zumba or yoga. I think that has gone a huge way in trying to normalize things for me, because once the work gets over, it kind of overlaps, right? When you're working from home, there's housework to do. There is a lot of overlapping space, and I know that okay, that 1 hour is just for me. I'm going to focus on myself.
Absolutely. I think what you made is a great point. This is about also having boundaries, where I was talking to my therapist this morning, and while I talk to a lot of people about, when they are feeling overwhelmed, emotionally distressed, or suicidal, I talk to my therapist about my own situation. Sometimes I need somebody to look at my life and offer me a mirror and suggestions. And one of the things she mentioned very clearly was having those boundaries, and these boundaries about saying that you have a routine. And I had a great routine earlier where I would work from 8 to 4, and then maybe switch off around 5 or 6, and go to exercise between 7 and 8, come back, have dinner, and then watch something or read. And my routine is gone for a toss. And I'm hearing from a lot of people that this is something that's happening to a lot of them. So I'm trying to wrest control back in terms of having that routine, and that's really important. As well as this me time that you're talking about, which is to say, hey, from this time to this time I will do office work. From this time to this time I will make sure that I'm with the family and do what I need to do with the family. From this time to this time is just me time, and I'm going to use this time to reflect, to pause, to just just basically to recharge your batteries. And that's important, and it's important to do that on a daily basis. Sometimes you may need to pause in the middle of a work day, and that is fine. And it can be a 5 minute pause. It can be a 5 minute pause where you just close everything out, maybe plug your earphones in into something soft soothing music, close your eyes and do a 5 minute deep breathing meditative exercise, which will bring you, recharge your batteries, and bring you back into the moment. It's important to stay in the moment. One of the things I want to mention very clearly is, for me, what has worked is not thinking about May 3rd or May 4th and what's going to happen, whether the lockdown is going to end, and our life is going to go back to normal, but to say that what I have in control is the present, and I want to stay in the present and do what I can. And that's taking care of your physical, your mental health, and doing what you can in the moment. Because, like I said, we should focus on the things that we can control and accept the things that we can't control. So there are all of these factors.
So the other question that I had is, a colleague of mine is staying apart from her husband.
Mhm.
He is alone with a new job in a new country, and then there's this lockdown.
Mhm.
And he has been having suicidal thoughts because it's either overwhelming, lonely, or all of it, right?
Mhm.
So what she is wondering is, how can she help him? I mean, there's no way that she can fly down or be with him physically. What can she actually do to help him out, or help him navigate through this crisis?
Okay, so like again, I want to say is, having these thoughts are normal during this time, and it is problematic if, like I said, if there's a plan and the stress starts to build up. What can she do? Number one, she can acknowledge the fact and that he's going through this. She can listen to what he's going through. She can set up times during the day to be able to talk to him. And the best way to do that is perhaps to set up video calls. She can share her life with him during the day as to what is happening, so that he also feels involved, that he's not missing out on what his wife is doing. She also needs to start enrolling people beyond her, which can include his parents if they are available.
Okay, okay.
It can include his friends if they are available. This can include his colleagues if they are available, or common friends who are calling in. And you can do, and in these moments, it's also good to start, to maybe reminisce over the past about, the good times that they had, and then say, hey, we shall soon be together. We don't know when, but looking forward to something is very important. Even in this famous book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl is in this concentration camp, and many of them die, but he survives because he has something to look forward to. So he has, he builds meaning into his life to say that I want to live so that I can do this. So the same way, she can talk to him about different things they can do together. About saying, once this is over, I will cook you your favorite meal, or we can go out and, do the things that you love doing, or perhaps take a vacation, or think about, starting a family, or
Okay.
adopting a pet. There are many things to look forward to. And also to, like I said, it's important that through the day that she keeps checking in. This checking in is important. And also to get him to promise, where there is a no suicide contract, where she gets him to promise to say that he will stay alive and not harm himself, because, they can, because she loves him, cares about him, and, that his life is worth living.
Sure.
So, yeah, so these kind of things, like I said, it does not have to be only about her.
Yeah.
And you can be very innovative. So she can send him a video, or she can ask him to send her a video. But meanwhile, she can also ask him to perhaps seek help. It's very important that we realize that we are not the only people who can help somebody who reaches out for help. Number one, involve friends and family. Number two, professional help is available, is effective, and it's possible that he may need psychiatric help. Maybe he has an underlying mental health illness which has not been diagnosed, which is basically the situation has precipitated what he's already been feeling. And with the diagnosis, he can be able to address what he's going through. So there are a number of ways to do this. But most importantly, not to discount his feelings, not to say, "Oh, this will get over too
Dismiss
soon."
it, basically.
Yeah, don't kind of like belittle his feelings or discount everything. Don't dismiss it, like you said, but to say that I hear what you're saying and I acknowledge how you're feeling right now, and I want to say that things can get better. So I'd like to say that at this point that I'm living alone for the past during this entire lockdown, and I went through this initial feeling of being anxious, severely stressed, worried about the future, and so on and so forth. And the most important thing is to do the basics right. And the basics is to make sure that you have a routine, get enough sleep, make sure that you're eating, moving your body so you're getting exercise, doing some amount of things that are perhaps spiritual or meditative. So maybe yoga or mindfulness meditation. But most importantly, to stop thinking about what's going to happen in the future, because nobody has any a clue about it. No leader in the world has any clue. The WHO head himself was saying we really don't know when this whole thing is going to end.
Yeah.
So we can just accept that this is the new normal, and adjust our lives to the new normal. It's easier said than done, but you can start with doing some of the basic things right.
So, Nelson, in the first question, we were talking about suicide ideation, and it's very different from actually, executing that idea, right? But there are some people who we know have either attempted a suicide, are suicidal by nature, and have a history of maybe a diagnosed mental health issue. How do we reach out to these people?
Right. So, unfortunately, if you look at at-risk populations during the lockdown, those with the pre-existing mental health illness, the situation can exacerbate their current condition. Or what I'm hearing regularly is that even those who have been in recovery or have made a full recovery in terms of from therapists, visiting their therapist regularly, and they've made a recovery or were able to address their issues, they've had a relapse. So how can you help? I think there are a few things, and I mentioned them and I want to reiterate. Number one, we have to understand maybe what the illness is. So whatever it is that the person is going through, it's important to get acquainted with what the diagnosis is. Because if you don't know what the diagnosis is, you won't know how to react. So if you're a primary caregiver, it's important to do that. If you're even a secondary caregiver, you can read up a little bit about it. It's important to know what medication the person is under. It's important to acknowledge that the lockdown has kind of brought those with mental illness more pain and suffering than others. And checking in is important. Like I said, just giving them a call, or doing a Zoom or a Skype session, and just listening. It's very important that as somebody who's checking in, the problem that most people will face is that if somebody comes and says, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling gloomy, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I feel like I want to end it all. Mostly what happens is that we approach this from, and this is natural, it's not like I'm pointing out a flaw, is that we move quickly into solution mode. What the person is actually looking for is perhaps for you to listen, to acknowledge their feelings, their current life situation, and to be able to fully hear them out and acknowledge what they're going through, and then respond with care and concern to say that I'm sorry that you're going through this. It's also important that if you know more about their mental health condition, and maybe the person's parents or their siblings or their partners don't know enough, to maybe have a talk with them about it. It's also important to keep a check on them to to see how they're doing, because sometimes what happens is that maybe the medication that they were prescribed may need to be changed. Maybe they've been off medication for a while, but they may need it again. So they may need a visit to their psychiatrist, or if they don't have a psychiatrist, then they need to maybe meet with a psychiatrist. And right now, like I said, you can get free access to psychiatrists. There are many lists. There's a list that Suicide Prevention India Foundation itself has compiled, which I can share with you and which you can share with your readers, your listeners later on, which are available. So it's important to keep checking in and also asking them the question about difficult questions to ask, like to say, is everything okay? Have you been fine? And if you're really concerned, and I just at this point I want to just tell your listeners about what are the warning signs of suicide, because for a lot of us we don't know what the warning signs are. The thing is, 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal will give out verbal or non-verbal signs, and the key to saving a person's life is to recognize these signs, having a conversation with them, listening to them, displaying care and concern, then persuading them to get help, and then referring them to a mental health professional or taking them to one. Suicide is the most preventable form of death, and the training that we impart, which is currently we doing it as a webinar and there's an online training, is called Gatekeeper Training. Gatekeeper Training is a WHO recommended suicide prevention strategy for the community. And it's hugely helpful, and we've trained close to 2,000 of them. And the signs are, if the person is either directly or indirectly talking about wanting to die. So indirect things could be, I want to sleep and not wake up, I'm a burden to everybody, I basically feel like I wish this whole thing will end soon. Direct is saying, I want to kill myself, I wish I were dead, and so on. There are other signs which are related to sleeping too much, maybe sleeping too little. And sleeping too little is a huge concern, because in a lot of completed suicides, usually the person has trouble sleeping in the last 48 to 72 hours. Not eating too much, mood swings, irritability, hostility, complete withdrawal, isolation, losing an interest in things that they used to have interest earlier, getting too religious or moving away from religion, possessions that they value, giving up on those possessions. So there are a number of signs that, and if somebody was earlier depressed and they suddenly appear to be normal or chipper and energetic, it is of concern. So any of this, if you start to notice, it's important to just start talking to the person, saying, is everything okay? I'm concerned about you. And all these questions have to come from a place where you show that you care about the person and you're concerned about them, rather than just being curious.
Okay.
And if necessary, the question of suicide can be very direct. So you can directly ask them to say that a person who's undergoing the kind of pain and the suffering that you're undergoing may think of killing themselves. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Very directly asking them. And there's a myth which says that asking somebody about suicide will put the thought of suicide in their head or increase the chances that they may think, make an attempt to die, which is completely untrue. In fact, it makes them relieved that somebody actually is asking them about it. And in a lot of cases, they're actually willing to talk about it. So it is necessary to look out for these signs. And if somebody comes to you and says that they're suicidal, it's important to listen, because the first reaction is one of fear, or one of offering solutions, or one of, completely discounting and being dismissive. It's important to listen. It's important to acknowledge where they are at currently. It's important not to offer, quick solutions to their problem. Yeah, don't offer quick fixes. Just listen, acknowledge, display care and concern. Tell them that that you care and you're concerned. Tell them their life is worth living. Tell them there is hope, and then to try and get the help that they need. And in a situation like a lockdown, you can gauge whether the person is acutely suicidal. If they're living with family, to inform the family about it, and if required, that they are taken to a place that they can get help. And right now, in major cities, you can still access psychiatric help.
Yeah.
And it's important that if you are currently feeling suicidal, and if you think that you're not safe, or if you feel that another person is not safe, that they are taken for a psychiatric evaluation, and given the kind of behavioral care that they need, but not to do it in a way that exacerbates what they're feeling right now, which is to say, have an ambulance come in and so on. If you try an Ola taxi or other ways to get a pass, other ways to get the person to where they are,
Okay.
and get them the help that they need. So sometimes they need it. Not all of them will need it, but sometimes just talking to them about it and letting them know that you care is important. And like I said earlier about having that no suicide contract, and also getting them to make a safety plan, asking them, do you have pills with you right now?
Okay.
Get rid of it. Just keep enough for the next 2 to 3 days. Don't stockpile pills. If you have anything else in the house, knives and everything, get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
So making a safety plan, as well as having a name and a number that they can call
Anytime
if things get really, really bad, and keeping it next to you or keeping it on your phone where it's maybe put under SOS, so that you just hit that button and that call is made.
Sure.
Right? So all of these things can go a long way to help save somebody's life. Like I said, suicide is preventable, and all of us reaching out to friends, family, even those who at risk. And what do I mean by at risk? I mean, at risk populations are those who are, let's say, living alone, those who are, elderly, the LGBTQIA community, somebody who's recently lost a job or on the verge of losing a job, you've been divorced, you have a substance abuse issue, which means, you're it's related to drugs or alcohol, having lost a loved one recently, you're a suicide survivor, or you've lost a loved one to suicide, all of these mental health issues. So all of these are at-risk populations, and it's important to keep checking in on them to see that they're okay.
Thank you for the inputs, and we will share the resources that you mentioned with this broadcast, so that if anyone needs help, they know that it's okay to reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for all your questions, and thank you, Yahoo, for having me.
Thank you, Nelson, for your valuable inputs. Sometimes all we need is to feel seen and heard. We don't need easy solutions, but a hand that will help us navigate through a crisis. Be there for the people who are going through one of the most difficult times of their lives. If you have any queries, do reach out to us through the comment section. Please don't forget to share. You don't know who might need to hear this. Thank you for listening in.